Sikhs from around the world by showcasing their professions, passions, and perspectives. I'm your host, Mandheer Singh, aka the Nihung. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Welcome to the Nihung's Arena, Mr. Brian Singh. On Facebook, everybody can find you as Brian Harris, and you are known as the Southern Sikh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about the Southern Sikh? Who is the Southern Sikh, and why do we have the products that you're producing, the podcasts and the blog and stuff?
You know, we were talking earlier, and when I started Southern Sikh, it started out as just a blog website,
right?
And I never did any promotion of it. I never did anything like that. It was someplace for me to put my thoughts.
Okay.
And I'm in Biloxi, Mississippi. So there's no Gurdwara, there's no Sangat here. So the first 5 or so years of me, of Guru finding me, was basically on my own. And, you watching basics of Sikhi and Nanak Nam videos and anything I could find in English. And
okay, so how long ago, you're saying the first 5 years, when did that start?
It was about 7 years ago.
Okay. All right. So about
7 years ago.
Okay. 2013-ish.
Yeah, somewhere around there. So, and like I said, I was on my own, and if I could find a book in English on Amazon or what have you, I would try and get my hands on it. And so, but I had these questions, but I didn't have anybody answer my questions. So I'd ask myself the question, go and do the research, I'd try and, use one of the Gurbani apps, and try to find an answer for the question I had. And then I would write a post, 3, 4, 5 paragraph post on my question and my own thoughts on my own answer.
Okay, but wait 1 second though. What was the initial, like, how did you even know what a Sikh was? What was that initial introduction to Sikhs or Sikhism that caught your attention in the first place?
So, they actually posted the video on YouTube of me telling this story at Singh's camp last year, 2019.
Okay.
And so I was having a little bit of a crisis of faith. I was going through a hard time.
Okay.
And I was raised Missouri Synod Lutheran, Protestant Christian, and which is in the Protestantism world, it's pretty conservative. And I was questioning my own beliefs. What I thought I believed, I no longer did, but I didn't know. I knew what I wanted to know, but I really didn't know that there was anybody else out there who thought like me.
Hmm.
And so I called a friend of mine, and he grew up Southern Baptist in North Mississippi. That's,
yeah,
hellfire and brimstone stuff.
Right.
And he was in the Army, and sometime after he got medically retired from the Army, and he found Buddhism, and he had converted to Buddhism. So I figured he was a good person to talk to because he had been through some of the same emotional roller coaster.
Right.
And he said, and I told him, I said, I'm having this crisis of faith. I think I know what I believe, but, I feel like I'm out here on my own. He says, you don't have a problem. And he starts laughing at me. I'm like, dude, what are you laughing at? He says, there's no problem here. He says, you're not having a crisis. Crisis doesn't exist. And I thought he was going to go all zen on me and stuff. And he didn't. He said, do yourself a favor, give yourself a break. And take a couple days and think about it, and think of the nicest, kindest, most generous people you've ever met in your life. And if all of those people have something in common, regardless of what it is, look into it.
I see.
Okay. So I did, and it basically came down to, I worked in an emergency room in Washington, D.C. for a couple of years, and all of our family practice residents and our internal medicine residents who would do their rotations to the emergency room were all named Singh, and they all wore a turban. I didn't put Sikh together with that back then.
Right.
But they were always very kind to me. There other people had other opinions. They're always nice to me, offer me food when, they had food in the doctor's office and things of that nature. And so I thought about it, and I said, well, they're Sikh. I knew by the 7 years ago that they were Sikh. So then I started looking into Sikhi. And so that's how that whole thing started.
That's really interesting, because when you talked about a crisis of faith, or however you want to word it, I think that's important for everyone, even for people born into the Sikh faith. Mm-hmm. My background too, my dad came here from Punjab when he was 15, and he completely assimilated. And we grew up not really knowing anything about Sikhi, keeping our hair, or anything like that. Really, it came to our attention after the attack at Darbar Sahib in 1984. That was worldwide news, and it's kind of an awakening for everybody. We were paying attention. So a lot of my Sikhi and my family, a lot of what we got into was after 84. Because before that, there was a Gurdwara twice a year, and we rented a bank basement, and that's the extent of it. Otherwise, completely American in the way we live. So got into Sikhi, started learning, learned Bhat, learned Kirtan, learned the history, learned the philosophy. And we were lucky to meet somebody who could explain the philosophy in English, because our Punjabi was not that strong. We could understand it. We weren't speaking it very well. My parents didn't really know any of the philosophy, so we couldn't even ask them questions. They didn't know any of the history. So we kind of got lucky that way. But still, even after learning all that, keeping our hair, learning everything, there came a point in my young adulthood in college where I questioned it all. And I had to reinvestigate, what did I like about, what drew me into this in the first place now? Was I just caught up in the emotions of 84 or whatever my family was doing? Or was there something registering with me? And I think that kind of thinking is important for all Sikhs. We a lot of times we just assume everything we're being taught, these sakhis and stories and the meanings being told to us, or here's the principles you live by. None of that means much unless you're really internalizing it. And to internalize it, you have to question it. Don't you think?
Absolutely. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're supposed to question our own Sikhi. And we're taught to investigate the Sikhi.
Right.
The more you investigate, in my experience, the more you find the truth.
Maybe that word investigating is a good word, because I'm saying question. And it's not maybe questioning it as in doubt. It's investigating it to find the truth. That's a good way to put it.
And for me, it was from the very beginning. It was me investigating this idea of ik. And when you grow up in the Christian world, everything is dualistic: heaven, hell, good, bad, right, wrong.
Right.
God, Satan. Everything is dualistic. Your entire way you're brought up is dualistic. So the idea of the philosophy of ik is totally foreign. Right. And
even though it's a monotheistic religion of one God, it's not oneness.
No, it's not. It's monotheism versus panentheism.
Right.
And so everything is dualistic. Everything in your life, good, bad, rich, poor, so on and so forth. So the hardest thing for me to grasp was, and I didn't know I was having a hard time grasping it until I realized that's what it was. And, that was the concept of ikonkar. And then I was driving to Atlanta for a leadership conference. And so I just do what I normally do when I was doing long drives. I would find a YouTube video to listen to.
Right.
And Satpal Singh's early YouTube were actually audios, not videos. And he did a full explanation, word by word, of the Mandir.
Right. Yeah, I know that one.
And he did ik. And about halfway through that hour-long kata is when I went ding. And I don't know that I fully understood it, but I grasped the concept enough that I knew I was Sikh.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think when I've learned through this, I started out with the thought process that having grown up in the West, having grown up under a Western theological philosophy, and that I was somehow hindered or had been hindered in my path, and that only, I'll use the term converts, even though I don't really like it a whole lot, but I'll use it. Converts could truly understand that. But the more I got to know more Sikhs, the more I realized that the story of Guru finding you or you finding Guru, whichever way that works, are all very similar. Because we all come from this background. You could be born into Sikhi and you could live Sikhi your entire life and not be Sikh.
Right.
And the same holds true for Christianity or anybody else. You can grow up in the faith, but if you don't live it, if you don't experience it, if you don't study it, if you don't do that, then are you really? And what I've been finding out, my own discovery is that, I'm not as unique as I thought I was. There's so many people out there like me, whether they're, grew up in a Western background or they came up in a Punjabi family and they just never paid a whole lot of attention, or didn't practice,
Yeah. I mean, you have that, right? So for Sikhs, we call it the dollar buffet. Have you heard that phrase before?
No.
On Sunday, you go matta take, you put $1 down, and then you go eat langar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the dollar buffet. And every Sunday, you're doing that ritual.
Right.
You're not paying attention to anything. You're not absorbing anything. You're not contemplating anything. You're just going through the motions of your faith, quote unquote faith.
I mean, I grew up going to church every Sunday.
Right.
And you sit through the entire service, you sing all the hymns, you do all of those things. You go to Sunday school, you go to vacation Bible school in the summer, you do all of those things. And it's no different. And I say it's no different. The experience that the way we practice is, if you don't practice your faith, then you'll never truly understand your faith. And it goes for any religion. I mean, it got to the point where, I was going to church on Christmas and Easter because that's where my parents went to church, and I was not going to embarrass my mama.
Right.
It wasn't that I wanted to be there.
Right.
It's that if the whole family doesn't show up for Christmas and Easter, they're going to look at mama like there's something wrong with her. Where are your children?
Right.
So, it's a little bit of a tirade, but yeah.
That's the whole thing, right? I think a lot of us are stuck in those kinds of things. Even being aware of all that and trying to be a better Sikh, there are still parts of you that fall into routines or patterns without thinking about it or without really understanding it or trying to understand it. Life gets busy, right? Like we have to pay the bills still. We have to take care of our families. We got kids or whatever it is. We got all these things that we think of, we got to do, even Sikhi wise. And then we make them into the ritual. Just like what you said, we do that all the time. We're telling our kids, you got to sit here. You got to be quiet. You're not going to embarrass us at the Gurdwara.
Right.
And that's not the point of being there.
Well, you know, and if you look at just the basic tenets of Sikhi,
yeah,
let's no deep dives. Just go on surface level. Guru Nanak told us to do this, to live a worldly life, be married, have children, have a job, live in the world, and be Sikh.
Right.
It's that balance that we have been, for lack of a better term, ordered to do by our guru, is to live that full Miri Piri life.
Right.
And I've gotten to the point where I now understand when I'm told that this faith is not easy. And I go, nah, this is easy. And they go, yeah, just wait a second. You know, and here we are. And now, I mean, I've got wife, kids, work. You know, I'm the only Sikh in my household.
Okay.
So my Sikhi is mine.
I see.
So for me to live it, I have to live my Sikhi on my own.
Right.
Not that my family doesn't support me. They do, but they're not Sikhs.
Right. Right.
So
is there ever any headbutting about it or conflict over that? Or is it pretty much like, okay, you do your thing, I'm going to do my thing, we're going to respect each other?
Inside the house, that's exactly what it's like. We respect each other and we support each other, you know, everybody on their path.
Nice.
You know, I do have a Methodist minister in the in-law side of my family, and my in-laws are Baptist,
right?
And which doesn't make me a family favorite.
I see.
By any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I was reading on your blog a little bit. Just so people know, I've never met you. I actually became aware of you through photos of Singh's Camp. I was at Singh's Camp in 2017. And I've known Mandeep and Avinash for 25, 30 years, actually long time, probably since like late 80s or something. I met Mandeep.
God bless them. When I go up to Toronto, I stay with them and they have to tolerate me when they go.
So, you know, I had a lot. I loved Singh's Camp. I was very involved with, it was Sikh Youth Federation then. It's Siana now, but it was the Sikh Youth Federation then. I was very involved with the camps there. All the retreats, the first retreat we had in 95, which was the first one I know of its kind, where it was all young professionals or college kids getting together rather than just the kids camps. And I've been involved with all of those. I've been involved with various groups throughout the years and taught at camps and all kinds of stuff. But I think for me, something happened where I got kind of turned off in the early 2000s. I kind of just went away.
Right.
Kind of went off the scene a little bit and just did my thing. And then I got married and started having kids. But Jaspal Singh, he pushed me to go to Singh's Camp in 2017 and I agreed. And I was so glad I did. It was such a great experience. I've been to so many camps, had so many of those experiences, but Singh's Camp was like, it reminded me of the old days. It reminded me of being new to Sikhi and feeling fresh to Sikhi. And that was really great. That was a great feeling.
You know, the Sikh Initiative is who puts on Singh's Camp and Family Camp and Singh's Camp. That's the only camp I've been to, but I know many people who've had a lot of experiences with many camps, and they will tell you that Singh's Camp is special for many different reasons, but it is unique among camps.
Yeah.
Sikhi camps. Because it's not like Khalsa camp where everything is mandatory and it's not like that. At the same time, you're drawn to whatever is going on.
Yep, absolutely.
And the level of fervor, I'll use that term.
Yeah.
Is not something you would normally, for me in my history, you don't experience that type of fervor or excitement in an all men's group.
Yeah,
but it's so different.
It's interesting. You brought up being all men. I know there's probably some people that are like, oh, why can't you have women there? This and that. And it's not that you can't. You could, and that's kind of what the family camp does. But there is a dynamic, and we may not want to admit it. You know how earlier you were talking about like we're not honest.
Yeah.
But when there is a female present, you will start to behave different. You check yourself. You check the things you might say, or where you're standing, or where you're looking, or there are things, and it may not be that there's something overtly, bad or anything like that. It's just you are self-aware because there's somebody of the opposite sex there. But with the guys just being the guys, I found that I could just totally relax. It didn't matter. If I wanted to just take a nap on the bench under the trees, just did it.
And just did it.
Well,
and I'll say this I had a friend of mine who 2 weeks after Sikh camp went to Basics and Beyond camp over in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And she had a different experience than I did. And, Singh's camp, I think I think there's something to be said for just like a coerce camp.
Right.
There is something to be said for being surrounded by similar people. And the thing about Singh's camp for me was that it was so supportive.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, at first, I'm the old white guy that, showed up to Singh's camp, and, and so everybody's killing a bit standoffish. And I don't blame him at all.
But they didn't like poke you with a stick?
Oh, no, that came later. That was when he did the death. He poked me with a really big stick. He says, I see what you're doing, and I get it, but at some point you're gonna have to engage, and for a military guy, when they go, okay, it's time to stop sitting, you better go engage. Well, you head off and do what you have to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think if it was for his prodding, I probably wouldn't have gotten near as involved as I did.
That's hilarious.
But the guys there, it's such a unique experience that you can go back year after year after year after year, because I know people have been doing it for the first 9 years. This was supposed to be the 10-year anniversary. COVID killed it, so hopefully next year we'll be able to do it.
Yeah.
But it's so unique, and to see a group of men that are that supportive of other men, there's not a whole lot of harassment going on there. There's not a whole lot of, from a military experience, you put 100 dudes in the same room and things are going to go wrong very fast.
Yeah. Someone's going to get hurt,
and at Singh's camp, I never felt that way at all.
Yeah.
And, the ages, we had the little Singhs. Yep. And we all the way
up to 75 years old. Yep.
Absolutely. And I think that's what made it unique, is that it's not it's not a kids camp.
Right.
It's not an adult camp. It's not a basics camp. It's not an intermediate camp. It's not an advanced camp. It is all of that.
Right.
And it's all of that enough that everybody can participate in all of the activities, even if you are, way up here in knowledge, and one of the Pracharks is doing sake on something, you still want to go.
Right.
And There were times when some of the stuff they were talking over my head, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out. They used Punjabi words, and I'm
Right.
like, and I'm showing Jaipal or I'm showing Mandeep. I'm like, dude, what'd they say? He goes, and said they'd whisper in my ear what they said. I go, oh, okay, I got
Yeah.
it. And that's the support that you wouldn't see, in my world where I come from. Somebody says, hey, I missed it. What did the colonel say? And they're like, you're done. And they won't tell you because they want to see you get in trouble.
So wait, real quick, you mentioned it a couple of times, and I actually had it written down in my notes from reading all your stuff and watching your thing, your podcast on Sikh Channel. The military. So what was your military service? Well,
I did my first tour in the Navy. I did my second tour in the Army, and I did the rest of it in the Air Force and I had 25 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you are a real military man. That was your career.
It still is. I still work for the military.
Oh, okay. You still work for, okay. I didn't know that.
I still work for the Department of the Air Force as a civil servant. And
I see.
So I did 25 years, retired as a master sergeant. I've been a medic, infantry, loadmaster, dental.
Wow.
So every time you change branches, you get to pick a new direction. And, I did it enough that I got to experience a little bit of everything.
Actually, my dad served in the Army, and he was in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
He served during that time. And when he came back, he started a civilian career with the Air Force, and he was with the Air Force for like 30 years. He was actually the chief engineer of the F-22 fighter jet.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was his baby. That was his project. And it was neat as a kid, seeing like little designs here and there, or when he was able to, like, a lot of stuff was classified most of the time they worked on it. But when he got older, he was able to show us like the first flight, and they actually gave him the American flag that they flew on the first flight.
On the first flight.
Yeah, he's got that in his office on the wall. So
he's still around?
Yeah. My
awesome.
parents live a couple of minutes away, and they help out a lot with the kids and stuff.
I'd love to meet them. So my family, the military is my family business. That's on the American side, my grandfather, my father, me, and my oldest son.
Okay.
So that's 4 generations.
Wow.
So both grandfathers.
Yeah. Then
my dad, me, my oldest son. And then we're pretty sure on the German side of the family, I had a great uncle in the Wehrmacht who was a prisoner of war in New Jersey. And I had a grandfather who was a flight engineer on C-47s and C-54s on the American side. And so I had family on both sides of the line.
Wow.
So it's a pretty interesting thing, but I think in a lot of ways, the old days of the sons following the father's footsteps, I think some of that is over. I think, but in my family, it was you graduate high school, you join the military, you do your time, you retire, your kid joins, they do theirs, they come home, their kid joins. And so we've gone all the way through my oldest son, and my oldest grandchild is 7. So we've got several years before we figure out
before you have to worry about that
generation.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, because I kind of picked up on it here and there, but I didn't see anywhere where you went through any specifics. So I was wondering about that, like what was the service, and then I didn't realize that you're still working for the Air Force. So that's pretty neat.
I still do. I do. I'm a logistical manager and a deployment manager.
Oh, okay.
For an operations group. So I've got about 530 guys. I'm sorry. I got about 530 personnel.
Oh, yeah. Right. Got to make sure that we keep it gender neutral.
That's right. That's right.
So before, were you born and brought up in Mississippi, or did you move to Mississippi?
I'm a military brat.
Okay. Yeah. So you were all over.
So I lived all over. My grandfather retired here.
I see.
And we were stationed here when I was young. My dad was an instructor at the air traffic control school here.
Okay.
And then we moved around. Went back to Germany, Arizona.
Yeah.
And my dad retired here. I graduated high school. I joined
I see.
California, Washington, D.C., and parts in between. And then I got off active duty, joined the Guard. Then when I left Maryland, I came back home, joined the Air Force, and in the Air Force Reserve. But if you're aviation in the Air Force Reserve, there's no, that one weekend a month and 2 weeks a year is a non-existent dream.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. So you can stay gone as much as you want as a reservist. It doesn't matter.
I see.
If it weren't for what the law they call the 1197 rule, we've got guys that would do 20 years as a reservist and get full pay.
Right.
The whole time.
I see.
So yeah, so I still work for them. I probably will until they force retire me.
Interesting. So you've been all over. You've seen it all, huh?
I haven't seen it all, but there's not much that surprises me anymore. I mean, right. I don't get shocked by much anymore. You know, yeah. I've seen about as much stupidity as the world can throw at me. And still occasionally something comes up and you just shake your head. You're like, really? It can get worse.
Yeah. I don't know if you mentioned it. Maybe I missed it, but like, how did you get the call for Singh's Camp? How did you find them?
So I had liked Singh's Camp Facebook page.
Oh, okay.
Anything Sikhi on Facebook, because I was using Facebook a lot to try and find people and stuff. And so in 2018, I had said, oh, that'd be kind of cool. So I called the one and only person that I ever had a real world conversation with that was Sikh. And I said, what do you think? You think I should do it? And he was like, well, it might be a little too much, but you could go.
Right.
So I let him basically talk me out of it. And then, so 2019 registration comes up. They put the post up, and I wrote in there, I won't be able to make it this year, but I hope y'all have a good time.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Not expecting anything. And then like the next day, I get the little reminder up there on Facebook and I click it and it's Jazz Paul going, well, why can't you make it? So I don't know. I don't have an excuse. I got nothing reasonable at this point.
That's just Paul. That's how he is. Definitely.
And so he basically left me with an internal, thing where I had to go, you could go. Right.
He planted the seed. That's all he needed to do.
You could go. So I ended up going, and that's how I ended up at Singh's Camp.
Okay.
So, sure. I mean, I live in the deep South in the heart of the Bible Belt. There's not a whole lot of Sikhi going on down here.
Yeah. It's the same thing with me. 'Cause I was actually born in Sacramento, but we moved to Ohio where my dad worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's where he worked. Yeah. But we lived in Beaver Creek, Ohio. That's where I grew up, is Beaver Creek, Ohio. And there was a lot of Def Leppard and cowboy boots and muscle cars. And that's what it was.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. I had cowboy boots, actually. Okay.
That's awesome.
So, but I know that life, I
was living in Germany when Def Leppard went on their Pyromania tour, and I saw really? Quiet Riot was their opening act.
Quiet Riot, yeah. But I was kind of on more of the breakdancing side. I was a lot of Run DMC and Houdini absolutely. And all that. But I did listen to I'm still a huge fan of Led Zeppelin and Van Halen. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that still kind of, gets me going. Like when I hear it, it takes me back to that, that nostalgic feeling,
Yeah. I mean, I've got a couple hundred CDs of old headbanging music. I've been trying to sell. Nobody buys CDs these days.
Yeah, it's kind of you gotta convert it and upload it. Yeah. So anyway, it seems like though once Sikhi kind of struck a chord with you, it seems like you're pretty relentless with it. Like you bit down hard and kind of really took hold of it and pursued it. It doesn't seem like you wasted much time here.
I would say that you're right. In that, at first, my curiosity was piqued because I realized that there were people out there that believed like I did. But, I never want to take anything on face value.
Okay.
And so I started doing my research and digging and digging and digging and doing my best to find the unadvertised end of any faith. There's always the surface and or what I call the billboard, and then there's always what's behind the billboard.
Right.
And I couldn't find in the Dharma, I couldn't find any fault. I couldn't, not for what little I knew, I couldn't find fault with it. And that being said, that just piqued my interest even more, was because, well, you've got to be able to poke a stick somewhere and find a hole in it.
Right.
And I couldn't. And so from, a Dharma perspective, from the Dharmic perspective, I couldn't find the chink in the armor.
Yeah. Interesting.
Where I found the chink in the armor was in the politics of the Sangat.
Right. I was going to say, like, when you think about the gurdwaras and how gurdwaras are run and the people in the gurdwaras, there's a lot of problems there. Right. It's far removed from the philosophy. It's become more of that social beast.
Bhai Jagraj Singh said in one of his things that the last place you're going to find God is in a gurdwara.
Right.
And I don't think he meant it in the way that it came across. He was talking about all of the non-Sikh political shenanigans that goes on inside a gurdwara does nothing for the spiritual aspect or for pursuing your relationship with Waheguru.
Right.
And so, and I found that, just in watching message boards and Sikh Twitter, I'll say it now, I'll say it again, and I don't hide my feeling about Sikhi on Twitter. It is the absolute worst. I mean, it is a hideous place to hang out. If you're
like what though? What do you mean? What are you seeing that you find so disgusting?
You want to find hate?
Yeah.
With people who identify themselves as Sikhs, you'll find it on Twitter.
Right.
If you people who believe that they're anonymous and that they can say anything and that they won't ever be held to account for what they say. And there is a level of anger in the Twitterverse, period. But in Sikhi and with the people who identify themselves as Sikhs, and I try to follow a lot of people because I like to hear what's going on in the world.
Right.
Man, that was the one place that when I got into it and I started reading everything that was going on, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is not what I signed up for.
Maybe to clarify, are you talking about people who are maybe a little more rigid and confrontational when it comes to maryada type things, like the code of conduct type stuff? Are you talking about just people
who identify themselves as Sikhs?
Yeah.
But whose actions and words are opposing to the belief system.
So maybe like the kind of language they're using or the kinds of things they're calling people out on.
Absolutely. Right. Or the things that they're calling people.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just so much that when you get out there and you start looking and you start reading and you're just like, because for me, I was looking for like-minded people. in the very beginning.
Yeah.
So what I'm reading in Gurbani and what I'm learning through these kathas and all of that, and then I'm trying to apply that to a group of people in this Twitter arena. I was not seeing anything. I mean, the way they talk to other people, the way they address other people, the material that they discuss.
Right.
Some of the photos that they put up there, they're about as non-Sikh as you're going to find.
Yeah.
But yet, and so.
See, I never did that. I never really like dug into Twitter and people's accounts. I do waste time on Facebook more than I should. And I have a tendency, like, especially if a Sikh requests a friend request from a Sikh, I almost always accept it. And I almost always regret it, especially, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but especially when I'm getting these connections from India, because I have noticed that, first of all, similar to what you're saying, language, the kinds of pictures that get posted. And then there's this like tendency, I don't know, this just started happening to me the last like 6 months to a year, getting bombarded by people that try to warm up to you and then they start asking you for money.
Yeah. Well, I tell you who has it much worse than both you and I put together.
Who's that?
Honestly, I don't have it bad at all. The vast majority of the people who contact me through social media are commenting on, my post or the podcast or something I've done. And I don't really get a whole lot of that. As soon as I get a hint of it, I unfriend them. But I will tell you that my core friends.
It's way worse.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I have seen sent to them. I did a show a month ago. I can't remember the subject matter, but my sister, I refer to her as my sister because I'm closer to her than I think I am to my own blood most of the time. She's, of course, she made a comment in that, and some of the people were messaging her from her
profile, from her post, from her comment,
and messaging. Some of the things that they were messaging, I'm like,
yeah,
really? I mean, just shy of pornography.
Absolutely. No, not just shy of. Often people are sending pornographic pictures. I don't even know where. I don't understand. You're looking at somebody who has the sarup of the guru, and you're going down that track with no shame because your identity is out there. I don't get it. I've seen it so many times with the females. I even had somebody Facebook called my wife, and she saw the name and thought it was somebody else and answered it. And it turned out to be some guy from India who was talking to her, kept talking to her. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I'm motioning to her. I'm like, what are you doing? Right. And she's like, hang on. Okay, it's okay. And then at one point he asks her for her number. And I heard that. And I was like, oh, no. Get off the phone. This conversation's over.
I mean, there's a level of bold.
Yeah.
That I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I'm about as American as you can get. And Americans are known for being pretty bold, and even uncouth at sometimes.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff that, I mean, I'm appalled.
Yeah.
And I don't get appalled by much. I mean, at all.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a level of disrespect that I personally had never witnessed before.
Wow. Yeah. That's
not just her, but a bunch of my core friends.
Yeah. I know.
Are like that. And 2 of them live in Canada. 3 or 4 of them live in the United States. 1 of them lives in Chile. Most of them are married, and it is just the level of disrespect is something that I was not accustomed to.
Yeah. And, there's lots of reasons why these things happen. I mean, people are born into Sikh families. They're not necessarily practicing Sikhi,
Right.
or they may look to. And often, you have to kind of look at it from the Gurbani perspective that we're all suffering from these five evils, the lust, the anger, the greed, the ego, and attachments, right?
Yeah.
We all are. Even those people are. And they're so unable to control it, it has to manifest itself in the real world somehow, right? And they're able to do it in a way that is less embarrassing because it's not in person, it's online. And so the outlet for it is easier. But that's the whole trick, right? We have to remember to do that when no one's watching, when nobody's there, when it's just you and Waiguru. And how are you acting at that point? And we don't think that way. And unless we change ourselves, nobody else is going to change either.
No, and I don't know. We've had several. I'm sorry. We've had several discussions in the past. Some of them.
I forgot to mention that you got to turn off your cell phone for the podcast.
Well, unfortunately, I left it Bluetooth, so
I'm just kidding.
But I'm a moron. So, I don't know. I feel like if you're going to identify yourself as a Sikh, if you're going to identify yourself as a Christian, if you're going to identify yourself as a Muslim, then you should carry yourself in a fashion that reflects your faith.
Right.
And I'm not, I'm there I am, and I'm not perfect.
But none of us are, right? Like it's not even about perfection at that point. It's just kind of about like having some integrity.
Yeah.
When you look at Sikh history and you see the kind of integrity that Sikh men were known for.
Oh yeah. You
know what I mean?
When you're going there and you look at the shaheeds and you realize why they're actually shaheed.
Yes.
What made a shaheed a shaheed? Was it because somebody died for their faith?
No.
That was the end result.
Exactly.
Of a relationship with the guru that ran so deep that people followed. These were the leaders, not just anybody is a shaheed.
Right.
But when you look at their lifestyle, they were Khalsa. And I think that term alone, I think, has fallen off. The name of Khalsa, if isn't carrying the weight that it should.
Well, yeah, it's become. I hate being critical, or hate being too critical on the Sikh Panth, or I don't even want to say the Sikh Panth because it's not even being critical of the Sikh Panth. I'm critical of us because what we do is we know how to dress the part. We know how to act the part, but we can play the part. It reminds me of that Bruce Lee quote that, a false humility is a sign of a great ego.
Right.
But we're very good at that. Oh, I'm your das. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, Guru Sahib's kirpa. We do all of this stuff and we say all the words. But then, we'll sing the shabads. Main Murkh ki jai, we'll call ourselves Murkh, a fool. We'll call ourselves Das when we're talking to each other, a servant. I'm your servant. Treat the person like a servant or treat them like a fool and see how quickly their ego gets hurt.
Right.
Right. And I'm not saying to do that to somebody else. Think about that for yourself. I'm saying those words, but if somebody called me a fool out of that context, how would I feel?
Right.
Because my ego is still there and I'm putting on a show.
Yeah. I just think, the level of respect that used to come with being Khalsa. If you think about the Panj Pyare,
Mm-hmm.
The Panj Pyare, that was the Khalsa and Guru Gobind Singh.
Right.
Wow. Just wow.
Yeah.
If you go back and you think about that and you then apply that same thought process to the Khalsa today, it's not that the Khalsa is not there. It's that I don't believe that. I don't know. It's such a hard thing for me to say because I'm not trying to talk against anybody. I'm really not.
Right. No, I get it.
I just think we like to throw the word around a lot.
Yeah.
It's
No, for sure. I know what you're saying. We'll put a damala on. We'll wear the blue chola. We'll have the big kirpan. We can give speeches at gurdwaras. We can do kirtan with so much energy. We can play that part. But I have seen with my own eyes, and I'm not going to name names or anything, but like I know I've been at a camp. This was probably 97 or 98. We were at a camp in Toronto, and there's a lot of energy for the Simran program, a lot of energy for the Kirtan program, right? And they would start early in the morning, like 2:00 in the morning with the Simran, then do our Nitnem, and we would have Asadiwar Kirtan, and everybody was just so into it. But the person that I saw that really was not in the Kirtan, was not in, they were there, but they weren't the ones up front kind of putting all the energy in, but they were the ones that woke up at midnight, came down, cleaned the whole divan hall, made sure all the sheets were perfect, made sure everything in the environment was ready for when the Sangat was going to come at 2:00.
Right.
That almost nobody noticed what that guy was doing the whole camp. He was making sure that everything that Guru Sahib was presented in a certain way, and that the Sangat was comfortable in a certain way. And actually that reminds me now, like you were talking about Singh's camp and the feeling like when it was just all the Singhs, there's a certain feeling too when it comes with food. And I know this sounds weird. It's not just because I love to eat. Okay. Because I do. I love to eat. But I've been at camps where there's restrictions, what time you're going to eat, what place you sit to eat, how many servings you get, because we got to make sure everybody gets a certain amount of servings, and then if you're going to get a cookie, everybody get one cookie, like all these rules. But
that's not Singh's camp.
No, it is not. As a matter of fact, I remember walking into the kitchen from like the back door. I walked into the kitchen, and everybody says Fateh, and they're like, Singh, you hungry? You want something to eat? I'm like, oh no, I'm good. They're like, you want some water? You want a Sprite? Here, take a granola bar. I'm like, whoa, guys, I'm good. No, sit down, have something to eat. And then they kind of sat there with me and ate. And I was like, that feeling of almost like instant family.
Yeah.
Like it was like, no, we don't care. Eat all the granola bars. We don't care, dude. Just sit down and eat with us.
Yeah, no, and it's it spoiled me for the rest of my life because literally probably for the rest of my life, because Langar at Singh's camp is what I believe Langar is supposed to be.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you on that.
It's not a place where we sit around and gossip. It's not a place where we sit around and talk bad about people. We're sitting down and we're talking about, Gurbani, how are you doing? We're interested in the health, and everybody, once they warmed up to me, I'd sit down and I would have these really long conversations with people.
Yep.
And that whole Sangat bonding aspect, and I've told people before, a Langar hall should be a place where, the Khalsa and everybody comes to eat so that we can solve the world's problems, because that's what we're supposed to do.
I think you're probably more on target with that than people realize, because it would be like you were in a workshop and a discussion started. The discussion carried the whole walk to the Langar Hall. It kept going while you ate. Now it's a 3-hour break and the discussion keeps going. And now you're sitting on the benches outside and it's still going, and a couple more people got added on. And then all of a sudden new ideas are getting thrown out. And, we all think we know so much. Like, here I am, I'm presenting this topic or whatever. And I think I know this topic because I did all this research and I put the slides together or whatever. And then you hear different things, you hear different ideas and you're like, I actually didn't think of that.
Yeah. Langar at Singh's Camp is an event all unto itself.
Yes.
It's not something that's on the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is on the schedule, there is something there that says, okay, at 11 o'clock, it's lunchtime, but is it really? I mean, sometimes you might be on the schedule, sometimes you might not, but the Langar Hall is open literally 24 hours.
Yeah. You could sit down, eat your langar, and because some discussion started or whatever, you kept going. They cleaned everything up. And then somebody come back around and say, hey, you guys want any water? Should I make some tea?
Absolutely.
Does anybody want anything? Do you want some fruit?
Yeah.
And, actually it just kind of hit me as I'm talking to you. When you think about concentrating on the guru, okay, so when we're in the Divan Hall, you have to concentrate because you're trying to connect, right?
Yeah.
Your needs need to be met so that you're not distracted. You need to have rest, you need to have food, and you need to have an environment that is positive, creative, and supportive.
Yeah.
That's what they provide. They provide that. They provide that so that you can do the work, so you can do that spiritual work.
Absolutely. I mean, there's not many other camps you're going to go to where paintball is every other day, and we're going to go throw hatchets because we can.
Yep.
And it's that. Yeah, but I agree with you. Langar at Singh's Camp has spoiled me for life. There's not. I hope one day I find a Langar Hall or langar being served in some place where that same environment is there, because, man, that's.
Yeah, I don't want to keep harping on this, but another thing that I thought of too, regarding the langar. Well, it's two parts, right?
Yep.
If you know that feeling of going to your family, your mom's house for dinner, or some aunt or uncle's house where they love you and everybody loves each other and they feed you and everybody's happy, versus like going to someone's house and that auntie doesn't like you and she's counting how much food you eat or how many glasses of water you drink or whatever it is. They got a chip on their shoulder, but they're nice to your face. You don't really feel like sticking around. You don't really even feel like eating anything. You kind of lose your appetite, right? But that's not the case here. And the reason I thought of that was I remember I left early. I left Sunday night because I had to work Monday. Mm-hmm. And my job's flexible. I'm in real estate, so it's flexible. I probably could have pushed and stayed, but I already had these ideas. I had to do this. I had to do that. I had to get back. So I'm leaving, and they had made these veggie burgers, which is fine, but I eat my veggie burgers very plain. Okay, give me some ketchup, mustard, and a little bit of cheese, and I'm good. Right. But they had made these veggie burgers, and they stacked it with all this stuff, and cucumbers and all this. And I'm like, I would never eat this, guys. It's fine. I don't want it. No. Take it. All right. So I take it. I put it down on my seat, and it's a 2-hour drive back home. I'm driving, and I'm listening to my kirtan, and in my truck, when I'm in my truck by myself, listening, I'm the best at kirtan in the world. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. The greatest rock star ever.
Yes, absolutely. So, I'm driving, I'm doing it, and I go, I guess I am hungry. I'll take a bite. I open up, I take a bite. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yep.
And I thought I should have got another one.
No, there's a lot to learn. And 2 weeks ago, I had Baha'i Harman Singh.
Yeah.
From Basics to Sikhi on.
Yep.
And we were talking about some of that, and how a lot of people will go to camp for 6 or 7 years, and then they'll feel like they've had their fill of what feels like Groundhog Day every summer.
Right.
And and then they really don't do anything else, and maybe that's true. Maybe it is Groundhog Day over every year. And after 6 or 7 years, you get bored with that. But if that's the case, and you feel like you have spiritually exceeded the limitations of that space, don't quit. Find that next place and take people with you. That may mean another camp with a different focus. If and he and I didn't really get needle down deep into that, but I feel like there should always be an evolutionary process to Sangit supporting each other through their path, and we all proceed down that path differently. Mine's extraordinarily slow. I'm at a snail's pace if I'm lucky. So
no, well, you say that, but the thing is, in the last 7 years, look at the transformation, and that's pretty fast, even for Sikh terms. So it's all a matter of perspective, and maybe not even focusing on whether it's fast or slow. I have seen. Look, I'm 47 years old now. Okay, and so it's not that old, but it's old enough.
You're a child.
I'm a baby with a big white beard. But I'm old enough to have seen people that were very much into Sikhi, left it completely, cut their hair, drinking, living a party lifestyle, sleeping around, whatever. They're just living their life up. They thought that's it. They're done because now they broke the code of conduct, that they're never going to get back into that circle. They're never going to get accepted. They're always going to be looked at, whatever. But they did come back eventually because there was something in them that was planted early on. It just took them longer to get to this point, and they had to go through some stuff to get there. Sometimes you have to go through those things to know it's not what you want or need.
I think I think now, today, I think, man, what if I had, back in the late 80s and early 90s, really paid attention to the Sikhs that I worked with, and how much further along down my path would I be?
Right.
And at the same time, I have to remind myself, you were young, you were a moron, and there's no way any of this would have made sense to you back then. And I think I did have to live the life that I lived up to that point to be able to grasp all of it.
No doubt. I mean, the thing is, it's not even just that maybe you were too young or maybe whatever. It just wasn't the time. I mean, Bhai Lehna Ji, he met Guru Nanak Dev Ji twice. Once when he was younger, and he did not follow the Guru. Then again, when he was older, when it clicked and he followed the Guru and he became Guru Angad Dev Ji. So that's true for all of us, and we could say, in this lifetime, oh, this could happen. We don't know how long this has been going on, how many times our paths have intersected, or how many times we met the Guru before it clicked, and now it's clicking. And because it's clicking, we should have this feeling of wanting to preserve it and take care of it and nurture it.
No, yeah. And, I'm grateful for where I'm at now. I'm blessed to have the Sangat that I do. Lord knows, don't know why, but I get to do, these podcasts and these shows on the Sikh channel, and, people are nice to me and they don't throw rocks at me yet. So that's cool.
With the podcast though, I was wondering, like, are you a techie guy? Like, is that kind of what attracted you to doing the podcast?
No.
Well, you got the Roadmaster Pro microphone there, and
my brother's been in music production and music promotions. He's been a radio DJ. He currently has 2 music related podcasts. He's got his own radio show, live radio show, plus his podcast, plus, and so he started this before I did. And don't get me wrong, I like to have gadgets and techie stuff.
Yeah.
But I had read several articles that said that video or audio is 50% of video. So my math brain said, well, if audio is 50% of video and audio is 100% of audio, then audio is more important than video.
Right.
I'll work on the video later.
Right.
So, like normal, did research, figured out, what was best for what I wanted to do. And so I started out, I don't know, my pod mic's over there. I started out with a pod mic. These microphones are hard to come by. They're not made in, the millions.
Yeah.
So when the Rodecaster came out, I called the sales engineer that I work with, and he got me one when they came in stock. Wow. I'm working on 2 more pod mics and 2 more headsets. When I have that, my goal was to be able to take this entire thing, put it in a case.
Yep.
Take it on the road.
That's exactly what I've been thinking too with this podcast. I don't want to be limited to Zoom, right? I want to be able to do it in person. It's a lot different to have that interaction in person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And, right now I do one-on-one. I've done as many as 3 people at a time on the show. But for me, because my shows are completely ad lib, we have a basic idea of what we may talk about, and then we just move through it in a conversation, just similar to this.
Yeah.
And but to be able to sit in a room with 3 other people and myself and sit down and have a discussion, to me, is where I want to be able to do that. So it'd be kind of cool if, Cincinnati Smogum comes up, I come up for Cincinnati Smogum, and me, you, Jai Paul, and Assis sit down and have, an hour or 2 conversation.
No, I love that idea. I mean, I think this is something that kind of with all this COVID stuff going on, just sitting around reflecting on things, I started feeling that like a lot of people have a lot of stuff to share, and information is, I guess you got to be careful because you don't want to go down the wrong track on certain things. But if we start talking to each other, I think the truth recognizes the truth.
Yes.
So if we start talking to each other, that conversation, the truth can come out of it, especially if you keep it guru focused, or intentionally think to yourself, let me keep this guru oriented.
Right.
And then even just how you were mentioning, kind of being drawn to something or whatever it is, your truth, the truth that you are, will be attracted to the truth. So when you're investigating to dig deeper, you're going to find stuff, and some stuff might not sit right with you right away. Some stuff might be like, I don't think that's right. But then some things will click right away. And some things might not hit you now, but later on they come back to you and you're like, I had to evolve before I understood that one.
Oh, that's happened to me several times. Or, a Shabbat, in April meant something completely different in September.
Right.
Same Shabbat, the words did not change.
Right.
But the understanding of it changed. And I think we find that, very regularly on our path within Sikhi. Even the most basic tenets or the basic understandings of Sikhi have a different meaning at different points on your path.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I almost said this, Shabbat, earlier when we were talking about how you mentioned a Sikh is supposed to be in this world and still be a Sikh. You don't isolate yourself. You don't do this. The Shabad Hirde Naam Visayo Kar Baithe Guru Te Ayo came to mind. And I was thinking on it very literal meaning is get that Naam inside your heart and sit at home and remember Waheguru. Okay?
Yep.
You don't have to go out into the mountains or whatever. But really that Shabad has a spiritual meaning, and that kar, the house that you're sitting in, is your body.
Right.
Right. So you can interpret that Shabad on a very literal, physical way, or in a very abstract, spiritual way. And it still makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And it's still right.
Yes, it's still right.
And
it could be right for you in one way and right for me in another way. Right.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to me trying to poke holes.
Right.
At no point have I personally been able to poke a hole in Gurbani and find the chink in the armor. I've yet to find it, and I'm not very schooled.
Right.
I'm not very schooled. I read what I can, and I do as much as I can, but I'm not very schooled. But I've yet to find where I've been able to put that, poke that stick and find a hole, that chink in the armor where it exists, because I just haven't.
Yeah.
It's for me, I found truth, and I continue to seek truth, and I continue to find truth in Gurbani.
Yeah.
And, us having a conversation like this today, our ability to have a conversation like this today, my ability to sit down and have a conversation with half of the people that I've been lucky enough, all of the people I've been lucky enough to talk to.
Yeah.
But there are people that agree to talk to me that their schedule is like way out there.
Right. Right.
And I'm going, you want to talk to me? I mean, I asked, but I wholeheartedly expected you to say no. And
I felt like that with you. I couldn't believe that you said yes. I was like, I watched this guy on Sikh Channel and he's going to come on my podcast.
No, absolutely. Well, I'll give you a good one. It happened to me today, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
I didn't have a guest for next week yet.
Okay.
And I was like, what do I got to do? I don't have a subject. I just need a guest. We'll come up with a subject later. And so I sent Bahai Sukhvinder Singh, Suki Baba,
Yep.
a message in the UK.
Yeah.
I sent him a message on WhatsApp, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing? What's up? Been a while. Glad to hear from you. How's the family?" And sure, what time you want to do it next week? And I was like,
Tuesday at 7.
What? So, we've got UK time going on, so it'll be at like 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But, because he's in the UK. But I found that if you're honest with people and you ask, and you're patient, a lot of times, Bhai Harman Singh for me was the same way.
Yeah.
I honestly am not aware. I mean, I look at the stats from my podcast site or whatever, and I could really care less about numbers. I find the little map interesting that shows me where people in the world,
right? Who's listening to you? Where are they from?
And I think it's nuts. I mean, I'm Malaysia, India, Hong Kong, Finland, Sweden, Spain, France, UK, Canada, US. It's Chile. It's nuts that, here I am, this knucklehead who, really, I don't have anything to say. At least I think that anyways. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You know what? It might seem like that to you. Right. But I can tell you for me, and I'm very critical. Okay. Like everybody that knows me is like, dude, you're too hard on everybody. You're too critical, whatever. But, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch a lot of stuff, on YouTube. I'm always looking, like how you were saying poke holes or whatever. I'm always looking at that in these like basics of Sikhi. What did they say that I agree with? What did they say that I didn't agree with? And then how can I, when I'm talking to my friends, how can I look smart by calling out whatever I saw,
Sure.
whatever. But I noticed that you were having real conversations. And I think part of it is you're doing them live. I don't know if you do all of them live, but the ones I saw are live.
All live.
Okay, yeah. And so your conversations are real. And that has a really interesting appeal to me. And I'm hoping people will feel that way about my podcast too, because that's what I really wanted. I wanted a genuine conversation. I didn't want talking points or bullets and notes and, like I gotta make this point, and I get to make this point, I gotta set it up this way. I didn't want that. I want a real conversation because I really want to understand what you are thinking. We're sharing thoughts.
Sure.
What are you really thinking? I don't want the presentation.
Well, and one of the things, and I think we mentioned this before the show a little bit, is that there is, and I'll use the term dishonesty, and y'all can send me the hate mail. I'm good with it. But we don't like to tell in the Sikh in the Panth itself. Sometimes we don't like to tell the whole truth because we feel like we're going to hurt somebody's feelings.
Yes,
and that's an honest statement. And I think not wanting to hurt somebody's feelings is a very good thing. At the same time, if the whole truth isn't out, it's hard to come up with a hard answer or a solution to a problem that may be affecting so many people within a Panth. Right. So I'll use mental health. The stigma within the Sikh community when it comes to mental health.
Right. Yep.
It's not good, but we don't talk about it a lot. It's starting to be talked about. We've got the group in Canada, Soch, and there's another group in Great Britain right now that are really focusing on mental health within the Sikh community. But there is a stigma there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And if we don't talk about it, if we're not willing to sit down and talk to one another and have an open, honest conversation about things, regardless of the subject matter, but things, then we'll never actually come to a consensus. Right. And those forces that are out there that really would like to see the Panth split will eventually win.
Right.
And I don't want to see that.
No, absolutely.
I want Panthic unity. I want to be able to walk into any Gurdwara at any time, and I want to be able to sit and not feel like, okay, I'm in this Jatha's Gurdwara, or I'm in this Jatha's Gurdwara, or I'm, I know it happens like that sometimes. I've heard about it, but at the same time, I've not experienced it.
No, but haven't you ever had the experience of people assuming you're like a Yogi Sikh or a 3HO because you're white American? Have you ever had that happen?
I guess we can go there.
Why not?
Why not?
Because it's the same feeling. If you go into one Jatha's Gurdwara dressed like a different Jatha,
right?
It's kind of the same thing. People want to think you're part of a different Jatha that you're not a part of.
You want to know why I don't wear a white dastar?
I can pretty much figure that out, but yeah.
I own a white chola. Ask me if I've ever worn
it. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
It's not because I have my own feelings about 3HO. And if somebody wants to have that conversation, I would prefer that somebody from 3HO also be on that conversation.
Oh, okay.
But I have my own thought processes, especially of late.
Okay.
With
all the revelations lately.
The stuff that's been coming out.
That's kind of coming out now more formally. But that's stuff I was hearing 30 years ago.
There's some stuff out there, and if you go back, I don't know if you go to the Southern Sikh Facebook page, scroll down a little bit.
I did look at your page.
There's an interview that was done with a guy working on his doctoral thesis in theology. And his focus has been on yoga in the United States and in the process of this gentleman doing all of his interviews and working on his thesis, he had Kundalini yoga as one of those things that he was researching.
Oh, wow.
One of those versions of yoga that he was researching. And he has pages and pages and pages and pages and pages and hours of recordings and documentation of stuff that some people had heard.
Yeah.
But he's the one sitting on all of it. And all of it only by accident.
Oh, wow.
And literally only by accident. And his doctoral thesis was not bent around Yogi Bhajan. So he did not write about that. He was writing about the different phases of, stages of yoga as a
right. And that just happened to be one of those things. Yeah.
Right. And as a result of that, the deeper he dug, the deeper down the rabbit hole he went.
I see.
And he ended up in places that, I could not literally, my heart broke. I could not watch the whole thing all at once. So there are 2 1-hour things there. And the first one I had to split in half. I had to watch the first half hour, take a break because it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then watch the second half. But, so I have my own thing with 3HO, but
yeah, we don't have to get into the 3HO thing. I mean, it's okay.
No, but yes, it has been asked if I came to Sikhi through 3HO, because I think people realize that I'm not 3HO. And my usual answer is that if you ever see me doing yoga, call the paramedics, because I'm probably like bent and twisted in a shape I cannot get myself out of. So, you're 47, I'm 51.
Okay.
And, I've had 3 knee surgeries, a shoulder reconstruction, 2 elbow surgeries. I've got the torn rotator. My knees, I got.
Their argument would be that you would be a perfect candidate for yoga.
I'm broken, anything other than, what do they call that when you're laying on your back with your arms out, is probably like, way too much. But you should see me try and sit on the floor for more than 20 minutes. Yeah. And your hip's going to give out.
I used to be good at that. Now, not so much. I used to be able to sit for hours and hours. Now.
So people ask me, if I came to Sikhi through 3HO, and when I tell them no, there is some surprise there.
Yeah, because that's what we're used to seeing. But I'd kind of figured too, from just hearing how you talk about Sikhi, and I just assumed that you didn't come from 3HO. But my point was only that the feeling about going into a Gurdwara and worrying about what Jatha you're from, I'm sure you have experienced that from people thinking you must be a yogi Sikh.
The only time that ever happened was the closest Gurdwara to me is 3 hours north of me. Okay. And I went one time, and I don't know that my discomfort came from.
Who's 3 hours north of you? Is that Alabama?
Jackson, Mississippi.
Oh, Jackson. Okay. So not quite that far north.
I live on the coast.
I see.
So I literally am like within eye shot.
That's right. So so you were right in the middle of all this hurricane and stuff, were you not?
Yeah, we had one go right and one go left, and it
literally missed you.
And we dodged a bullet on both of them. We had storm surge. For us, 3 feet of storm surge is like, yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Because we were the ones who got hit directly by Katrina. So anything less than like 28 feet, we're like, awesome. We're going to survive this one. So, we get about 3 feet of storm surge off of each of the storms.
Yeah.
But we got missed.
Oh, wow.
And I'm grateful. It's been 15 years since Katrina now.
Yeah.
And I remember it like I woke up from it yesterday.
Oh, wow. It was that bad.
It was horrendous. Let's just say the easiest way to describe that experience was you went to bed knowing where you lived. You woke up in the same bed and had no idea where you were at.
Really?
The landscape had changed so drastically that I was driving and did no landmarks.
Wow.
That
Just because everything was demolished.
It was demolished. If it had been demolished, we'd have been happy. Some of it was literally non-existent.
Wow.
We were missing entire buildings. They were gone.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. I've actually got a book that was published by the local newspaper that has a lot of the before and after pictures.
Oh, wow.
And I have a hard time even going and looking at it now, but it's a nice piece when somebody says, "Oh, Katrina hit here. What did it look like?" And I just hand them the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I live in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Right. Yeah. We kind of went on a tangent there. Yeah. So you're in Biloxi, and then 3 hours north is Jackson.
3 hours north is Jackson. 5 hours to the west is Houston.
Okay.
There is a small, there's a very small Gurdwara in Birmingham, Alabama. And then there's another small Gurdwara so Birmingham is 5 hours from me. And then north of that is Huntsville.
Huntsville. Yeah, I know people in Huntsville very, very well, actually. I've been there several times.
Yeah, so the Huntsville Sanghat is actually, and go figure, there's, almost as many engineers there as there is in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Yeah. So, so yeah, Huntsville's got a small one, but that's 3 hours is the closest Gurdwara for me.
Oh, wow.
So, I was, as many people were unhinged or came unhinged as a result of COVID, it drove everybody online, which gave me Sanghat.
Yay. Hey, so I just saw when you put your arm up, I saw it earlier, but the tattoo, what's that represent? It looks like a compass.
It is a compass.
Okay.
So north is towards my hand. So I went through some rough times several years back. So in the very center of the compass is a semicolon.
Okay.
And the semicolon is in grammar is a place where a sentence could naturally stop, but the story continues.
Interesting.
So that represents suicide awareness.
Oh, okay.
It's the place where life could have ended, but we chose to continue.
Interesting.
The compass, the north is pointed in the direction of my hand. So no matter which way I'm pointing, it's always my true north.
Hmm.
And then if you look around, I don't know if you can see the color real well, but the color around it looks like had them look like the Aurora Borealis.
Yeah. Okay.
Northern Lights. And that represents no matter how dark and cold life gets, there's still beauty in the world.
Oh, nice.
And I got that before Guru found me.
Yeah.
But everything I need to be reminded of is on my right arm.
You got your kata, you got your compass. Interesting. Right. Cool. Very cool.
So it's the only tattoo I have, and it's symbolic for me.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder, if things go dark again, you'll come out the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah. I saw when you put your arm up, I got a glimpse of it, but then this time I got a good look at it. And I figured I'd ask you about it. It's
hard to.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good right there. I can see it, the whole thing. Yeah, I can see like the colors all the way around.
Yeah.
Very cool. I have no tattoos. I wish I could show you something, but I got nothing to show you. I can show you my kunda on my t-shirt.
Let's see what I got going on here. Oh, this is Jai Paul's.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're watching this and you need an architect, call Jai Paul.
He's going to appreciate that because the millions of people that watch my podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Just like it's kind of like mine. I'm like, it's weird. But yeah, I think we're headed in the right place. I think the diaspora is in a place now where it has a choice.
Yeah.
To shrink or grow. But I think Sikhi in itself and in its own history has had those shrink and growth periods.
Yeah. I mean, we've done this.
Yeah.
We know how to do this.
So we'll be okay. I mean, my biggest goal is Panthic unity. There's a lot of knuckleheads like me. My particular political leanings aren't necessarily everybody's, but I think we all have an opportunity to sit down and talk, and as long as we respect each other's perspective, you don't necessarily have to agree with it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a great point about Panthic unity. And I think the work you're doing is helping because you're having conversations, people are listening, and it makes you think. It made me think. And that's why I was like, oh man, I'd love to have you on. I haven't rolled out my episodes yet. I've got a couple recorded. So I'm going to figure out what order I'm going to release this. So you might be number 1, you might be number 4. I don't know where you're going to fall in the order of things, but
just throw me out there whenever, it's like throwing the baby with the bathwater,
No. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking we got to do this again. Maybe, see how things go. I don't know that I'm going to last. So I'll see what kind of reactions I get to the podcast in general. But
well, if I can give you any advice,
yeah,
you're in about 6 or 8 episodes in. I do all mine live, so it's a little bit different,
right?
Because I have to be in a certain place at a certain time to do certain things, and I've learned to work with it within those parameters. And I'm not self-produced anymore. I am doing it through the Sikh channel now.
Yeah.
I release all the audio on my own.
Okay.
On the Southern Sikh podcast.
Yeah.
But any video or all of that belongs to Sikh channel, and they get to do they handle that however they want to.
Right.
I don't think that we're televised yet. There was some talk about it being televised in UK.
Oh, okay.
But I told them whatever. So
yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. It's all about exposure anyway. Once people start to listen and kind of catch on, you just never know how. It's hard to think how people outside the United States are going to react. And I kind of felt that even with my podcast, what I'm doing here with the Nihung's Arena, the whole thing was, I'm an American and I'm giving an American perspective. That's how I look at it. I feel very different than a traditional Punjabi Sikh, and there's so much that I think about and talk about with my friends and people I meet. And I never really get to dig deep in any of that stuff, because you're in a rush. You're going here, you're talking to somebody there, or you meet somebody somewhere at the Gurdwara and then you got to leave.
I'll tell you what, I'll make you do.
Okay.
Take a note.
I'm literally going to take a note.
Take a note. That content right there, the idea of being an American Sikh versus a Punjabi Sikh, save that, and you and I will do an episode on my show with that one.
I'd love to. That'd be awesome.
And then, because I like that subject matter, probably not for the reasons that some people might think. But it's that subject matter that needs to be addressed is, what is a Sikh?
I think you and I are kind of on the same wavelength with this, because my thinking on it too is I don't want it to be highlighting the differences. I feel like the differences are already existing in people's minds, and I want to show that there's a way, there's something that's culture or a thought, a way of thinking or whatever, and there's Sikhi, and that Sikhi is independent.
Anything other than ik is an illusion.
Right.
So the idea, so my thought process is, and we can deep dive on this one. I'd love to.
Absolutely. Let's save it for,
that's one of the places where I find, we all have that little thing that, that props a soapbox up under our feet, and makes us want to, cry to, to the world.
Yeah.
And that happens to be one of mine, not because I'm white, not because I'm American, but because my own experience says that it's irrelevant.
Right. But I think we're getting to the same point. It is irrelevant, but you almost got to talk about it to expose it. So
to make it irrelevant.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, save that one. And 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, no problem.
Not this Tuesday, but the next Tuesday after that.
Okay.
You and I can do I'll have you on my show, and we'll use that as a springboard to see if we can, how deep we can dive and still stay within Gurmat.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. All right. Panthic Unity, the Southern Sikh, Mr. Brian Singh, thank you very much. Thank you for stepping into the Net Nihung's arena. And anytime. I can't wait to talk to you again. Anytime.
Okay. Just let me know.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.